just a little, you don't want to have the button really showing there. Robbie Martin, you recently came out with a documentary, a very heavy agenda. It's 3 parts. It's 7.5 hours long, which me, in preparation for this interview, was forced to watch the entirety of over the weekend, even though my girlfriend was visiting from New York City. Explain yourself.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you had to sit through all that.
No, it was actually very enjoyable, and my girlfriend really liked it, and it was fine. Also, I have an adult human girlfriend, and I want to just put that on the record. Continue.
Okay, noted. Yeah, I mean, I spent quite a long time working on this documentary. It's in 3 parts, so you can actually digest it in installments. So if you don't want to watch all 7.5 hours, you can, watch it in chunks. It's a trilogy. Yeah, I mean, the reason I made this documentary is because most people's understanding of neoconservatism kind of stems from the Bush era. Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 kind of created a sort of household understanding of what neoconservatism was.
And how would you define what that is, like, in that sense?
Well, what made me want to make this film was finding the people who I would actually call the sort of the more hardcore neocons in the Bush administration. People who, most of them actually didn't serve inside of his administration, who actually had a lot of influence over it. So a lot of those people were part of this think tank called the Project for the New American Century, which closed down around 2007. But those people who formed this think tank actually were extremely involved in sort of the Iraq War propaganda campaign.
So these were some of the kind of maybe shadowy figures behind the scenes?
Yeah, some of them behind the scenes, some of them doing punditry. Most people probably know who Bill Kristol is. He was the co-founder of this think tank. But his partner at this think tank, Robert Kagan, is someone who a lot of people don't know about. The only reason he's notable sort of in the last 2 years to people is because his wife, Victoria Nuland, was caught on a leaked phone call saying F the EU. Victoria
Nuland is Undersecretary of State.
Assistant Secretary of State for Eurasian Affairs.
And she is married to Robert Kagan, who is one of these neocons that's been influential in policies that has led to, say, the invasion of Iraq and different hawkish foreign policy things?
Absolutely.
That's not cool.
No, it's not.
Why is that not more well known?
It's very well known sort of behind the corridors of Washington, D.C., but why is it not known publicly? I think it's simply because it's just not a sexy enough or sensationalist enough story.
You're telling me you don't think Robert Kagan is sexy?
No, I didn't say that. But
because he's he's soft on the eyes. I mean, he's no Fred Kagan.
Yeah, well,
but he's doing all right.
Speaking of Fred Kagan, I mean, I think that's an interesting figure because his brother, Fred Kagan, was actually one of the main people behind the strategy for the Iraq war surge and the Afghanistan war surge. And Obama sort of let him shadow Betrayus in Afghanistan along with his wife, Kim Kagan.
They were in Afghanistan?
Yeah, just hanging out, had a desk in his office, giving him orders with no official military rank whatsoever.
Orders or advising Betrayus?
Advising, yeah.
That's, and actually, I'm recalling now in the documentary, you have footage actually of, it's almost like Petraeus is, he's getting some sort of honor and he's like lovingly sort of roasting them, being like, or roasting himself, saying something to the effect of, oh yeah, every day I check my emails and make sure that, I was doing right by the Kagans or they were gonna yell at me or something like that. That was really creepy. I mean, this documentary, I think, is incredibly important to watch and super interesting, but it really is, a downward spiral all the way to the bottom of the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to go as far with it as I possibly could.
Yeah, I would say you borderlined on kind of like an obsessive assemblage of finding all of this footage and stuff like that and putting it together, all the documents stringing through a narrative and stuff like that. Why did you not do anything else with your time?
Because it was honestly such a scary thing for me to find out that a lot of these neoconservatives simply rebranded themselves after the Bush era. So,
like when Jell-O wanted to become cool again.
Yeah. So, everyone who was associated with Bush, it was kind of like kryptonite. Nobody really survived, or so it seemed. Wolfowitz, Cheney, they kind of all got
Colin Powell
burned. Yeah, even Colin Powell did. But luckily and actually smartly, a lot of these neoconservatives understood that they had to rebrand themselves to continue to have influence in D.C., which they did very heavily during the Obama administration.
Name names.
Well, Robert Kagan actually got into the U.S. State Department under the Foreign Policy Advisory Board put on by Hillary Clinton.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though these guys were instrumental in pushing an agenda and pushing a perspective that was manipulating intelligence information in order to get people to invade a sovereign nation?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how successful their rebranding effort has been.
Holy moly. So let me ask you this. I've heard this interesting term being thrown around that maybe goes towards their rebranding, because the term neocon, some of them don't like to refer to themselves as neocons. It has these negative connotations. So they've done something now that seems to be appealing to a wider a swath of people in political thought. They call themselves liberal interventionists.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? What that means?
Well, liberal interventionists have dominated Washington, D.C. culture as long as I can remember. And without them, during the Iraq War, the neocons and the Republicans wouldn't have been able to push through the Iraq War as successfully as they did. So there's almost like the neocons rely on this more larger world of neoliberalism in D.C. to influence that world with their agenda. And they got so good at that at this point in time, now that Obama is leaving office, they're looking forward to a possible Hillary Clinton presidency, and they're actually adapting themselves to fit that neoliberal mold. And now they no longer call themselves neoconservative; they're trying to angle themselves more as neoliberals.
So these guys are not just aligned with, say, your right wing kind of Bush camp and stuff like that.
No, I mean, they've been so, I mean, I would argue that it's been extremely smart of them to try to disassociate themselves from that, and it's become less about party or partisanship. It's more about pushing through this hawkish foreign policy agenda regardless of party.
So this liberal interventionism thing, my understanding of it is that what they do is they'll use the pretense of saying that they want to spread democracy or spread, socially liberal ideas, different identity politics things about, say, like religious freedom, press freedom, sexual identity freedom, all of this sort of stuff. But it's actually just a pretense for them to do regime changes and stuff like that. And so you'll have people like, say, a Sam Harris or a Bill Maher on board as being these liberal interventionists. While
Absolutely.
At the same time, what it's doing is potentially eradicating what's known as the gray zone between, Western secularized, say, Muslim people, and then, ones that are in the caliphate. They want to. It's creating a sort of situation where they're either going to have to continue to live in the West, but in a very subjugated way because of repression, or they're going to have to, run to the radical Islamist place. And so these liberal interventionists are actually eradicating the gray zone, which is very nefarious, and I just wanted to eloquate that to you so you knew that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, I mean, they definitely have done an extremely good job of boxing people in, but also I think Sam Harris and Bill Maher are an interesting component to this, because what they're doing is sort of, they're playing in a sandbox that the neocons have created to sort of box in liberals and be like, look, those people aren't practicing freedom of speech. Those people are, homophobic. So therefore, we must attack.
So let's carpet bomb them?
Yeah, I mean, in a simplistic way, that's what it leads to. Now,
I will tell you this. I found your documentary incredibly insightful. It's sourced very well. I interpret as being very accurate. There was one inaccuracy. You repeatedly refer to Bill Maher as Bill Maher, and I just wanted to fix that for you out of respect.
I appreciate that.
And I decided, I wouldn't bring it up like publicly or anything. I would just tell it between me and you. I wouldn't do it during the interview that's going to be televised.
Yeah, of course.
Or anything.
Why would you do that?
It's Bill Maher, and for you not to know that, give some sort of insight into you really not having your finger on the pulse of pop culture, because you've probably been immersed in this documentary for the past number of years.
Yeah, being a recluse for a couple of years working on it is maybe pretty detached. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man. We, the Royal, we appreciate you scurrying down this rabbit hole and doing this, because as I was looking at all of this footage, I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah. No. And I could completely understand. I mean, it's incredibly tedious work. Even just watching videos of these neocons at think tanks very, very boring. But then you'll occasionally, you know, if you leave it on for about an hour, you'll hear them say some pretty alarming things. So.
Yeah, there was one gentleman who was talking in such a way that I couldn't tell if he was being serious or not, because the things he was saying were so insane and so warmongering. I think if I describe what he's saying, you'll be able to remind me of his name. He was talking about how America is not a country of peace, has never been a country of peace. We like instability. We like there to be instability around the world, and I think he went even farther than that. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, his name is Michael Ledeen, and I would describe him as one of these neoconservatives, 1.0. And that's how they used to talk. They used to be that candid and insane at these public think tank talks. With the help of people like Robert Kagan and sort of the smarter, savvier neocons, they've learned not to talk that way. Because if you went around talking that way right now in D.C., you would, you know, even though a lot of people in D.C. are arguably insane, you would sound very openly insane.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's so much in this documentary, and you'll learn so much, and it's so enjoyable. But just to see some of this stuff, it's mind-boggling how insane these people come across in their own words. I wanted to ask you about this. So, you know, as you know, I'm probably one of the biggest Hillary Clinton supporters in the entire country. I've been really into her my whole life, ever since she was, you know, Republican and, you know, campaigning for Barry Goldwater in high school when she was one of the Goldwater girls. I was really into her then, 17 years before I was born in 1964. I have a, you know, an I'm with her lower back tattoo, which is very strange for my girlfriend to see when she pegs me. But my question is, are these neocons freaked out about Hillary Clinton becoming president? Maybe.
You would expect them to be, but what's actually happened is Trump has freaked them out so badly that they have actually gone over to the other party. This is the first time that prominent neocons like Robert Kagan, Max Boot, Elliot Cohen have actually openly endorsed a Democrat for president.
And they're not endorsing Trump.
They're not endorsing Trump.
They're endorsing Hillary Clinton.
They're endorsing
the
Hillary
neocons that pushed the policy that created the invasion of Iraq and have led to ISIS and stuff are endorsing Hillary Clinton.
They're endorsing Hillary Clinton, and it's not even in secret. If you go to Hillary Clinton's website right now and click on events, you will see an event that Robert Kagan, the co-founder of the Project for the New American Century, hosted a fundraiser for her.
A fundraiser for her openly?
Yeah.
That she has. That's not. That. What. How. That. It's not. That, how do you. What?
I mean, I'm as confused as you are. I think this is. They're almost testing the waters to see how much of this they can do before people start really calling them out, and so far it's working because nobody really is.
There was one section in here where you bring up Vice News,
yeah,
and you were critical of Vice News, and you know that bothered me because, as you know, Vice is one of the coolest things on earth. You know, it's the media equivalent to James Dean. You know, if he were black, and you know, there's 4 words you can say at any bar that's going to help you get laid, which is like, you know, I freelance for Vice. So why are you so afraid of the cool kids?
Well, I mean, I'm particularly jealous of Shane Smith's amazing leg tattoos. He's got quite a tapestry of surfer bro tattoos going up and down his legs. It's amazing work.
I mean, tribal tattoos are cool.
Yeah, but besides that, I mean, what I found with Vice is that they did an incredibly good job of towing U.S. State Department propaganda for the past 2 years. During a really crucial time. I mean, you can kind of go back to 2014. When the Ukrainian uprising happened, when the Venezuelan protests were happening, all these crucial sort of events that the United States find, you know, is really crucial to them, sort of hotbed foreign policy issues. Vice did a lot of specials where they actually sort of skate this line of leaning towards a pro-Western sort of U.S. perspective, which is interesting because they sort of portray themselves as this hip, kind of edgy, not liberal, but sort of, you know, almost quasi-left-leaning news network. But when you actually start to look at, for example, their Russian roulette specials, it's quite clear what their agenda is. In the making of this documentary, I mean, I just kept finding more and more things. Alyssa Mastromonaco, who worked in the White House, was one of Obama's advisors, is actually COO of Vice now.
Well, I'll tell you what, among so many other interesting things in this documentary, that was the first time I was exposed to that idea. And you actually have a lot of really kind of interesting proof and documents about that and stuff like that, collaboration with them and, Voice of America, which is America's international presence in, in international media. So that alone was so interesting, plus all of this very, very in-depth explanation of the neocons. The documentary is called A Very Heavy Agenda. It's currently available on video on demand through Vimeo.
And it'll be up on filmsforaction.org fairly soon. You can get it on DVD.